Syracuse football makes a big addition to its offensive line.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, this is the first of two podcasts today because we got to commit. So we are going to do a mini podcast right now, and then later on, we are going to talk about the full offensive line as it stands right now for Syracuse football. Sound good, everyone? Great. All right. The Orange, they make a big addition to its offensive line in Alabama offensive tackle Naquil Betrand commits to Syracuse football. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about this kid. I'm going to give you guys a little scouting report. There's not a lot out there, so I'll do the best I can with that. And then we'll talk about the possible role that he can have on Syracuse's offensive line next season. Betrand is listed at 6'6", 330 pounds, and he's got 3 years of eligibility remaining. So this is someone where if you can coach him up, he's got plenty of runway with 3 more years of eligibility. And also he's got terrific size for a tackle, 6'6", 330 pounds. Betrand was originally in the 2023 recruiting class. And this is where a lot of the Syracuse ties really begin. He's a Northeast kid. He's from Pennsylvania. And the Orange were going hard after him in the 2023 recruiting cycle, but they did not get him. The team that won out for Naquil Betrand was actually Texas A&M, and his primary recruiter was none other than Elijah Robinson, the current defensive coordinator for Syracuse football. Naquil Betrand entered the portal last offseason, and to nobody's surprise, really, based on the fact that Fran Brown comes over to Syracuse and he brings on Elijah Robinson. They did try to get Betrand last year in the portal, but they missed out on him. It was right before his visit to Syracuse. He commits to Alabama. But the Orange, they finally get their man. It's 3 years in the making. Naquil Betrand chooses Syracuse. Betrand is a 3-star transfer on 24/7 Sports and on On3. As far as a scouting report on him, honestly, like I told you at the top, there is not much to go off of. At Texas A&M, he did not play a lick, not one snap over there, so you don't really have any data on him there. How about at Alabama this past season? Well, I read an article from the Daily Orange that Betrand only played 28 snaps for the Alabama Crimson Tide. They all came in the season opener, and he was removed from the roster in early October. So he's got 28 snaps in 2 years. From his high school scouting report on 24/7 Sports, again, there's just not much out there. It was just one sentence, and I could paraphrase it for you. He's played on both sides of the offensive line. That's good for a tackle that you can play both sides. They are the same position, but it's different alignment. It's left tackle and right tackle. It's just different. The alignment is flipped for those that are my football junkies out there. So being able to play both is definitely a valuable skill, and he's got a wingspan of nearly 7 feet. So this is a big kid. He's got excellent size. This, to me, we'll talk about his role, but this seems like a kid that has all the physical tools to be great. You can't teach his size. He's 6'6", 330 pounds. You can't teach a 7-foot wingspan. And he's versatile. He can play left tackle and he can play right tackle according to his high school scouting report, which there wasn't much out there. However, in 2 years, granted it's at Texas A&M and Alabama, he hasn't really been able to see the field. So he's going to need good coaching. Hopefully this staff could really coach him up. And he's also going to need opportunity. Now, those kind of go hand in hand. If the staff can coach him up, then he'll really get the opportunity. But if they can't, then he won't get the opportunity. You see what I mean there? Like, he also has to develop too in order for him to get that opportunity. We'll talk about his role coming up because it's certainly very interesting with the way the offensive line looks right now for Syracuse football. So that's what's coming up next on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. It's that time of year. The college football playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports' coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Syracuse football, as of now, is playing in the Holiday Bowl against Washington State on December 27th. FanDuel has the Orange as 10.5-point favorites. A big part of that is because Kyle McCord, he's playing for Syracuse. John Mateer, Washington State's quarterback, he's in the portal. So he's not going to be playing for Washington State. And they got a ton of opt-outs too. So that's why it's 10.5. It's pretty big, but there's a reason for it. What do you think of those odds? Well, you can decide for yourself at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. What's the role for Syracuse football's newest offensive lineman, Naquil Betrand from Alabama? It's very interesting, okay? Because I don't really have a defined role for you. We have to understand the context of the offensive line, and we'll dive deeper into that in the podcast coming up tonight. But for some context, who were the primary starting tackles for the Orange this past season? Well, Demetrius Weatherspoon was one. He's got another year of eligibility left. The other one was Savion Washington. Savion Washington, he had a terrific season, but he's out of eligibility. He cannot come back. So if you look at the tackles so far for the Orange, David Wohlabaugh is returning, presumably, and same with Demetrius Weatherspoon. At the time of this recording, of course, they could enter the portal if they so choose, but as of right now, they are on the roster. When I look at Betrand, at minimum, he is going to compete for a starting spot. Okay, because when I look at the tackles of Wohlabaugh and Weatherspoon, neither are guaranteed locks to be starters come opening day against Tennessee. Neither of them are. So you bring in a guy like Betrand, at minimum, he's going to compete for a starting job. At maximum, he's a starting tackle and will come opening kickoff against Tennessee. Sound fair enough? It's hard to define. And also, this leads me into what we're going to talk about on the podcast tonight. And that is the full scope of the offensive line and the fact that the Orange are still going after a couple of more offensive tackles in the portal. The names specifically, Miles McVay is one of them from Alabama as well. And then there's also Ratrell Perry. So those are two offensive tackles they are still going after in the portal. They have visits coming up or already have visited. So Betrand overall, I like the addition because there's clearly some upside. He's 6'6", 330 pounds. He can play both sides of the offensive line. He's a tackle. However, his role is really difficult to define because you've got two tackles that are coming back, neither of which are guaranteed to start. And I wouldn't say that Betrand is a lock to start either next season. So that is it for this mini podcast on Naquil Betrand. Syracuse football makes its first addition to the offensive line in the transfer portal. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. And for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On ACC podcast. Alex Dono and Kenton Gibbs, they keep it real, and they bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. You can find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. As I've been saying, tonight we are going to talk fully about the offensive line, a full podcast. Hopefully that'll be released at 6 p.m. Eastern. If I do have to push it back, I will let you know at LO_Syracuse, but it will be out tonight. And thank goodness, honestly, I didn't record it before this news broke because I was literally about to, and then the news broke. So thank goodness. All right. So I got a little bit lucky there. I also am aware that Jaden Bellamy, a defensive back for the Orange, a corner, he entered the portal. But as I will say in the podcast coming up tonight, there's a lot that's going on. I will address defensive backs and Bellamy specifically tomorrow. Okay? Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. If you really liked it, subscribe to the channel. Turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. And I will see you all later tonight.